episode 29. And this week we're looking at all these really cool tools and development kits that we can use to build things on Cardano.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Learn Cardano podcast, the podcast where we break down all the ins and outs of Cardano so that you can build some really cool projects on Cardano and get really involved in the ecosystem. So in this week's episode, I have a whole bunch of different tools that we can actually use to help speed up some of the developments that developers are doing in the ecosystem. Interfacing with the blockchain itself can sometimes be quite hard. Working with nodes, keeping them running, keeping them up to date is a lot of work. And there's a lot of tools and services out there which are appearing that can really help with that process and speed things up. I also have a bunch of tools that are very useful for stake pool operators that are interested in optimizing their processes and really, speeding up some of the things that they need to do and not working directly in the command line, working with GUI interfaces and a couple of promotion tools as well. So if you're into any of that, this is the episode for you. Now, if you want to get any of the show notes or any of the information that I'm talking about in this episode, you can find it on our website at cardano.com.au/EP029. And that will take you to the show notes for this episode, where you can see right here all of the notes that I've put together for this particular episode, all the references and a little bit more material about them so you can really get a better understanding of what everything is. Now, before I get into all of these tools, I'd just like to point out some of the cool events that are happening in the Brisbane space at the moment. So if you're in Brisbane, Australia, there are some really cool Cardano-related events that are happening. The very first one is Project Catalyst. We're talking about how that all works, how governance is looking on the Cardano blockchain, and how you can participate in Project Catalyst, either as a proposer or a Catalyst advisor, or just simply voting in the process and understanding how it all works. Next week, Wednesday, we have a look at all of the decentralized finance platforms that are building on Cardano at the moment. So we're breaking down every last single DeFi project that we can find and talking about them. So we've got community members that are actually talking about their favorite projects as well, giving it a breakdown, and we're all trying to understand how and when these projects might actually launch and what the space is going to look like. And then later in next month, we have a social event as well. So keep an eye out on what is happening in the Brisbane space. All of these events will be live streamed. So if you miss them or you're not in Australia, you can check it out all online. So you can find out exactly what's going on and join in on our conversations there. They'll all be live streamed. So I'll post the links in the show notes, or you can subscribe and you'll be able to find all the live streams later on. All right, let's get into the tools for this episode. So the first one here that we have is BlockFrost. This is probably the most common one that is out and about. If you've been developing something on the Cardano blockchain, you would be probably really aware of BlockFrost and what it can actually do for you. It is an API, or application programmable interface, and you can connect with it via their API using a unique token. You can sign up and you get your secure token where you can access the API data and communicate directly with the Cardano blockchain. So that's what it is in a nutshell. There is full documentation around it. Query the various accounts, addresses. You can look up assets. You can look up the blocks that have been produced on the blockchain. Now, for any developer that is building websites in general at the moment, they're probably aware of APIs and they know exactly how they work. So a competent developer that does work with APIs and builds applications, they would know all about this, and at a glance, they would understand exactly what this API does and how to actually use it. From there, you can build all sorts of different applications and do some really cool things around it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, the other cool thing about this, if you're just a starting developer and you're just playing around with a brand new project, there is a free tier, and they promise that will be free forever, essentially forever. Now, it gives you a limited amount of requests, but you can see here at 50,000 requests per day. That should be more than enough for a majority of small projects that are out there. If you're doing some big drop or building a really big application website, you may want to move up to some of these tiers. Now, if you are using BlockFrost for a NFT drop and through that minting process, you want to use this API, which will make your life a lot easier, it's probably best to use one of these really larger plans. There's this large plan here. It's 59 euros, so it's not going to break the bank. And especially if you're doing a 10,000 NFT drop and you're relying on a system like this, you want to check and make sure that's scalable and make sure that you are in the higher tier so that you can actually produce and get your project up and running. Maybe the second tier here, the 19 euro a month might be enough, but it's probably good to actually test and make sure that all happens and works well. Now, in regards to testing, it is probably a good idea to use something like Loadster. Loadster is a really cool tool that we've been using for a long time when we're building out our own applications. It allows you to mimic user interactions and script them so that you can continuously hit a website and a server to mimic a user's action. You can then scale it up to, here in this demo, they've got 475 simultaneous users on the server, and it goes testing through for about 11 minutes. So here you can see that they've simulated 475 consecutive concurrent users in that particular time frame, and you can see how the server, how the website interacts, and how it performs under stress and under load. So if you have scalable infrastructure and architecture that is scaling up in the background as users are coming into the ecosystem and the website and really pushing it to the limits, you can see if all that auto scaling actually works. And we've done that for a couple of our clients and a couple of our projects ourselves. I'll just go down here. You can see one of our tests here where we had 10,000 concurrent users hitting the server extremely hard, transferring over 100 gigabytes in that test period, and we had a lot of errors. So we could see during that 20-minute period of that particular test that it was throwing a lot of errors, and we could go back, investigate, and work out what was actually happening on that particular server in that particular test, so we can improve things and make sure that the user experience for those 10,000 users in that short amount of time was as good as possible. Now, Loadster does have a fee in terms of its usage. They do have a free tier again, but if you really want to hit that highest limit, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So it's a once-off test. I think we paid almost $1,000 for that one test with 10,000 concurrent users. But once you know that your infrastructure is good and your setup is good, and you can point out some of the flaws, you're pretty much good to go. You have a baseline of infrastructure and you can understand exactly what you need and what you require for this type of project, and you can do it again in the future. So it's a really cool platform, and I highly encourage you to check it out. There's a plenty of these, and there's also some open source ones as well. So if you don't want to pay for it, there's open source ways of doing load testing, and you probably just need to set up a particular server to mimic the bot interactions with your website. Now, going back to BlockFrost, I didn't mention this, but BlockFrost have a huge amount of software development kits, SDKs. They've been working hard on this to build up adoption of BlockFrost. The more SDKs out there, the better. Essentially, for those that don't know, software development kits, SDKs, give you a really good baseline bit of code so that whatever your project you're building, you have a framework to work on. And when you're moving from project to project, you don't need to start all over again or copy code or remember what you did in the last project. You have that really cool baseline so that when you're developing your next project, you can just go npm install BlockFrost SDK kit, or whatever it's called for node package BlockFrost JS. So then you can install that. It'll do everything that you need to do. Install all the dependencies, install all the baseline things that you need, and then you can just go ahead and just develop the code that you need. So you've got your API, you've got your SDK, and you combine them together, and you can just concentrate on building out your app. So that's really, really cool. Really important to see if there's any of those SDKs out there. Now, BlockFrost also have a whole bunch of Project Catalyst proposals. They go through, I can't remember what fund they were in. I believe it was in Fund 5 as well. I saw a whole bunch of SDKs there. and you could vote for them and help support their ecosystem so that you can use these SDKs for free and build up your next application. So really cool project, BlockFrost, absolutely love it. Now a similar project here is TangoCrypto. Again, they also have a Project Catalyst proposal in the works as well. So you can check it out here. I'll put links to it in the show notes down below so you can see it. There's limited amount of time for voting on these Project Catalyst projects at the moment. But you can see here 128 applauses, little claps, 130. It's weird. When I click it, it goes from 128 to 130. Maybe there was someone 129 in between. But you can see it's got this red hot fire thing here. So it's a really desired service that they're providing and putting together. Now, what is it exactly? Now, it's very similar to BlockFrost, but with a couple of different things, a couple of extras that make it a little bit easier. So again, they provide that full interaction with the Cardano node. So they take care of the node itself so that you can interact with it via their API. So it makes it a little bit easier, well, not a little bit, a lot easier, so that you don't need to actually tap into and set up your own Cardano node. You can actually just talk to it via the API. Now, what does it actually provide? Let's go back to the show notes here. So on the show notes, I've listed a couple of things that they have providing, and a lot of it's around, which I find really useful, a lot of the data that you can pull off a node and a lot of the notifications when something might happen. So notably, of course, they have their REST API. They also have a bunch of webhooks that you can tap into. So if something happens, if you're monitoring something on a particular wallet, such as a payment, you can make that hit a webhook of some sort, and that webhook can do other actions. So those other actions could be something like payment gateway notifications, maybe refunds, something like that. So you can hit that particular webhook so that it can do some other things on the website. So this opens up a whole plethora of different actions and different abilities that you can do on various applications. So tapping this into, you can build like a middle layer application that will hook into an existing website and do further actions there. Hopefully that made sense. You can do email notifications, you can tap into WebSockets, mobile push notifications. So it's starting to look into some of the mobile apps. So when something happens, like you get a payment to a wallet and you get a notification through your little application, cool. And then you have Kafka and ADAOZ Kinesis, which is data streaming stuff. So you can pull down data and move it into applications. So you can query it there. So it's a lot of cool little things. Not little, they're actually really useful things. So you can make your application that little bit more dynamic or tap into existing applications. So it's kind of like a bridging layer between a whole bunch of things. Now, on top of that, again, they have their SDKs, which they're building out, their JS SDK, their iOS SDK built on Swift, Android, etc., etc. So again, like I mentioned before, with BlockFrost, all these SDKs are really important for any ecosystem. So you're not building code from scratch. You've got a baseline to work with. So that's really cool, really important to look at. Now, they are still in their development phase for this product, I believe. I saw this a few months ago on Twitter, and I thought, great, that's fantastic. More of these systems and more of these services out there make things really, really easy. They do have their free tier at the moment. So if you're building one-off application, this is good. This is where you can start. So it's got the mainnet and testnet differentiator. So you can do that with BlockFrost as well. You can connect to the testnet and do testing there. It's got a very similar amount of requests per month, plus that one webhook and one app. So you can sign up, you can log in, you can create your application. I did a simple curl request and it did exactly what I expected it to do. So it's a really cool setup. It's working as it is now. But as things scale up, you will be needing to wait for their infrastructure and whatnot to scale up with it. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to contact them directly and they'll be able to set you up with something and work out fees or whatever you need to do to actually get their service up and running. So that's really cool, and TangoCrypto is something to keep an eye out on. As you can see, they're doing quite well in their Project Catalyst proposal. You can find out all the details there. Again, links in the show notes and in the description down below. And I'm just wanting to see how much funding they're asking for. It looks like they're going to do a lot of work here. and they've got their budget breakdown, and they're asking for 60,000 USD. Now, under the developer ecosystem for Project Catalyst here, they have an allocated over 1 million USD in terms of funding. So in terms of that, it's quite a small amount out of that to 1 million to get all of this done. So I'm really hoping that they get this up and running over the next 3 months to get it into the Cardano ecosystem. So in 2022, we should see another service alongside BlockFrost doing some really cool things for the Cardano developers. Now my next one here, I have this one from ADAOZ, the Heidrum. Now this one here, I saw it ages ago, but I didn't really look into it because I wasn't into the developer space yet. I wasn't ready yet to build anything. But I finally did have a look at it. Now, it does come from ADAOZ Wolf or Ada Frog. He's a pretty prominent personality in the Cardano ecosystem. You can see him on Twitter almost every single day, every minute of the day. And he does some really cool things, really good work. So Carl, thank you so much. I believe you sponsored this one through a Project Catalyst proposal as well and got this developed for the Cardano ecosystem. Now, the really cool thing I like about this is that it's built in my native programming language. That's PHP and Laravel. So it's I noticed here when I was looking through it, I could see blade templates there, PHP. That's usually a dead giveaway for that it is a Laravel app. And then if you go into the application layer itself, you can see the commits here. Yeah, okay, Dockerize Laravel 8. Cool, easy. That makes my life a lot easier. But what Heidrum is, I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But it is a little application that will allow you to do secondary actions after something happens to a receiver's wallet. So distribute another NFT, distribute a native token, whatever it might be. So it's that simple interaction. You could use this, for example, to make a faucet. So if someone wants to give you, let's say, 5 ADA, and for that, in exchange, you give them 50 of a particular native token, space token, for example. So in this regards, you can set up that faucet, and it will hit this particular application, and it will give the user in return their token that they're expecting. There is a graphical interface that sits on top of this as well. So you can simply get this application up and running on a server or on a local host. And from there, you can go through, load up the application. It's one of the Laravel dashboard things. So it's very familiar look and feel if you're used to Laravel. But you can go through here, you set up a payments wallet, a drops wallet, and from there you'll be able to do manage all of your little drops that you're doing with this particular wallet. Now let me just go back to one of these other screens here, and you'll be able to see how it looks a little bit more. So you have a wallet that might be receiving ADA or receiving test data in this case, and then another wallet here that would be distributing a different different native token. So it's a really cool application. It takes to do all this and get it up and running yourself. It does take a bit of time and a little bit of effort. So these tools that make the faucets a little bit easier and a little bit quicker to develop, thank you. It's just makes life a little bit easier for various developers that are trying to build these things. So we're trying to, I was going to build all this out myself and build a little faucet for the Learn token, the Learn Cardano token. But after seeing this, I thought, great, that just makes my life easier. So now you can trade a LRN or trade ADA for a LRN token and gain access to the learning management system. So that is just makes life easier. So thank you so much, guys, for your contribution there. Now, the next one here, this comes from the SundaeSwap team. So if you haven't heard of SundaeSwap, they're a DEX that's being built on Cardano at the moment. They're doing some really cool work. They've done a lot of interviews, and I'll link to one of the interviews here. I didn't do this one, but one of the prominent YouTubers around there has. So you can check out that interview and learn a little bit more about SundaeSwap. But what they've done here is they've put together a little toolkit. Not a little, it's actually quite big. If you check out how many lines of code there are and how many commits they've done, 71 commits, it's quite a bit to it. But if you go through here and have a look at the description, what they've put together is a couple of really frequently used tasks that are done over and over again just to make the process easier for developers and a lot of the command line interface stuff that you do. So here we got building transactions, signing the transactions, submitting the transactions, minting tokens, creating wallets, funding the wallets, putting ADA into it, transferring around, and then calculating the fees. So all of these things you would have to do manually. And if you look at some of the tutorials in the early days of interfacing with the command line, you would have to do this all step by step. And some of the commands that you submit are huge. They are chunky. You have to build some of these in separate files so that in your command line, you're referencing these separate files. It gets a little bit tedious and a little bit difficult to manage if you're not very well versed with the command line. So they've put it all together for you to make it just that much easier. There is also a video. So if you're a visual learner and you just want to skip through a bunch of things to learn how to do all this, you can see here it is very command line heavy. But if you're used to that kind of thing, great, fantastic. This is definitely for you. It'll make your life easier, trust me. I had to play around with it. It's good stuff. All right, so that's a whole bunch of different tools for developers to make things a little bit easier and a little bit quicker in the Cardano ecosystem. So if you're looking at building something particular on Cardano, these tools will help you out. It will at least give you a bridging gap between the blockchain to your application that you might be building. Now, this doesn't go into any of the Plutus code, any of the smart contracts that are on Cardano. That will come later. As more and more tools are being built and more resources are being built, I'll go back and do another video about all that so that you can get a better grasp of some of the cool things that are being built and what would possibly help you speed up some of your development on Plutus smart contracts. But now let's have a look at some tools and some really cool things that are available for stake pool operators. Now, if you've set up a stake pool, there are a couple of ways of doing it. And one of the ways is to go through a guide from CoinCashew. So CoinCashew details a whole bunch of things and a whole bunch of steps in regards to setting up a pool. I found that process a little bit harder because you do have to do a lot of the command line things, sign your own transactions, etc., etc. The other way of doing it is using this suite of tools here, the Guild Operators Tool Suite. So the Guild Operators Suite has a whole bunch of things that have been developed by the Cardano community, little aspects here and there. So we have CN tools, we have G Live View, and we have the Topology Updater, as well as a couple of other things. But it's all packaged into one big suite of tools that you can download and install using this thing down here called the prerequisites. This will download everything that you need, install the base of your node, whether it's a relay or a block producer node, and then install all of these extra tools on top of it so that you can get your node up and running as quickly as possible. It really helps to understand the underlying reason why they're there and what they're doing for you, so that if anything bad happens or if you stuff up somewhere, you can work your way around it and have a really good understanding of how to actually fix it. So CN Tools does a lot of things in terms of the wallets, the funding, the metadata for the pool, updating it, for example, looking at transactions, looking at your block history of your actual pool as well. So you can use the CN CLI so that you can look at your predicted blocks for the next epoch, for example. So it all integrates in there, and it's a really cool way of doing it. It also does backups and restorations of your wallets as well. And there's different ways of doing this. It lets you do it with a hardware wallet, lets you do it with a hot server where you actually have your keys on the server. You probably don't want to do that. But also a cold setup where you have your keys off the server and you can sign them offline and then put them back online to sign and manage your server that way. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do it, and it's a really cool setup. G Live View here is what you can do or what you can use to manage and monitor your actual server node setup. So you can see how many peers are being connected to your actual relays or your node producer, your block producer. You can see how much resources are being used, and also if it's in sync with the blockchain. So you can see the tip, the difference, and its reference point on the blockchain, how many blocks and how many slots have gone ahead, so that you can make sure that your node is up to sequence and up to sync with the actual blockchain as well. So it's a really cool tool to monitor and visually see and track what's actually happening with your node. The last little tool here is the topology updater. So relays, pools, they're going up and down all the time. You might be connected to one of those pools that have been retired and are discontinued, and all their relays are down. You thought it might have been a really cool one to connect to manually, but over time the operator might have given up. And this topology thing, this topology updater, allows you to automatically track that process. It will see what pools, or it won't see particular, but it will pull down from a list and see what pools are active and what pools have a proper topology updated to the Smash servers, so that you can pull down that data from the topology updater and sync and connect to updated pools. So it's a really cool way of maintaining your connections and your nodes. I remember back in the day when I was running an IOTA server, IOTA node, you'd have to manually go and find people to connect with. And once you find those connections, you had to maintain those connections. So it was a really tedious process of finding people, connecting with people, and then joining up the network. I believe it was pretty much the same in the early days of Cardano as well, and you had to manually go through and find pools to connect to, and the people just connect to the popular ones. But in this case, you can automate that process. So it's a really important part of the process to make sure that you're connected to other live and active nodes in the network. So that's CN Tools, or the Guild Operators suite, and it's a really cool way and really easy way to set up and maintain your pool. Now, once you have your pool, there's some other things that you might need to check out. And this one here, this is something that's been put together by Andrew Westberg, and I think Adam Dean is putting together the website or piecing it together for him. And it is pool perks. So pool perks is something that you can give your delegates opportunities, not opportunities, that's not the right word, but little extras when they're delegating to you. So if you are offering a particular perk, which you can see here, there's a whole bunch of different pools that are offering perks here, you as a delegate can go and get one of those perks. So I'll just click on this one here, Stake for Nature by Stake for Nature. View their perks, we can see what perks they have. So here they are giving away a NAT token, and they're distributing that to 49% of their delegates. So you can go in and claim this particular perk and potentially get this particular token that they're distributing out for their pool. Now I'll just click on another one and we can see how some of the other ones, how their perks work. And I'll click on Boss Stake Pool. So here we go, Ninjas of Cardano. So this one is 100% distributed to people that want to claim the perk. So you as a delegate can go to this particular pool's perks. You can claim this perk, and if what it does is it checks to see if your wallet is actually delegated to this pool. If you're delegated to the pool, then you can claim the perk. So that's the check that Pool Perks does. So it's a really cool way of rewarding your delegates, giving them a little bit extra so that they'll stick around and claim your perk. I guess delegates could move around to all these pools and pick up all their perks. So that's something they could actually do as well. But to actually claim one of the perks, you have to pay a little bit of ADA. It's just the ADA for the minting process and the transaction fees. So it's very minimal. I think it's like a couple of ADA at the most. So it's a really cool way of promoting your pool and giving your delegates that little bit extra. Now, like I said, all of this stuff, everything I've mentioned here is on the show notes for this particular episode. You can get to it at cardano.com.au/EP029. Maybe I'll change the domain one day. I don't know why I chose .com.au, but I'm in Australia, so .com.au is where easy to get for me. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you give us the thumbs up, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and I'll be producing a lot more content like this. Let me know in the comments down below what you found useful. Let me know if there are other tools that I didn't mention that you think need a worthy mention. There's so much stuff out there. I can't keep track of it all, and I really do rely on the YouTube comments and community members to come in and actually highlight some of these things for me. So please, if you have something to share, shout it out. Shout out, reach out on Twitter, reach out on Discord, or leave a comment down below, and I would love to hear about it and investigate a little bit more. So until next time.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.